pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And then I call for the approval of the agenda. We have a motion for that. Okay, we have a second.
Support.
Okay, Don, Joy and John, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any discussion? Okay. And then we will go to recognition of visitors and hearing of people present.
There are no requests.
None today, okay. Then we will go directly to the discussion items and Dr. Vanderjack, the audit.
Thanks, we'll turn over to Mr. Briggs to start with the audit, and now the finance committee had a chance to go through it.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Joel Corson is here tonight. I know you all know Jody Martini from the business office, but Joel's gonna walk us through PowerPoint presentation. The audit itself is in the board folder, so that's the long version, but his PowerPoint is much more enjoyable.
So,
Get away. I should have my mic on, I'm sorry.
All right. So as Pat was saying, we do have a PowerPoint for you tonight. It's a little bit easier to digest than the full audit report right here. There is a secondary letter, we'll touch on that at the end, but you should have 3 items in front of you. We'll get into it here in a little bit, but this is slightly different than what you have seen in the past. This lacks a single audit, which would be normally at the back. There's a little bit of a snafu with the federal government you might have heard about. They've yet to issue their compliance supplement, so they have basically yet to tell us what the auditing requirements are for federal dollars for 6/30/2025. So it was supposed to be out in July, and it's now nearly November. What that means is that at some point, whenever that compliance supplement is issued, we will issue a single audit. We have it done in draft form, waiting for the regulations to come out. Once those come out, we'll check them against what we have done. Assuming there's no significant changes, we will file it probably within a day or 2. We have a draft of it. We've audited in compliance with that draft. We just haven't seen the final version yet. It's not issued yet. So we will talk about that a little bit here. I just want to get that out of the way right away. That is why your report is about 10 pages shorter. The single audit is not present in your financial statements. But I kind of skipped right past it. I'd just like to start off by saying thank you for having me tonight. Get the opportunity to go through the financial statements and the audit results. It is a very strong report. We'll get into that as we go, but just thank you for the time, and then thank you to the administrative team, Pat and Jody, as well as Stacy and the rest of the finance team for all the hard work that goes into the audit. So getting into the PowerPoint on the second page here, the audit results. Again, we already kind of touched on it, but thanks to the excellent business office team. And then we did go through the full financial report here about a month ago on October 2nd, where I think it was about an hour and a half. We had an active discussion with the finance committee where we talked through, again, in quite a lot of detail, much more detail than we're gonna get into today. But if you do have a question, feel free to stop me and to ask those questions. And then again, on to the next page, we do have, in terms of audit results, we have an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. So that's the highest level of assurance that we can provide as your auditor. It basically means there's no more adjustments that we're aware of that we should have made to make your audit more accurate. And then in terms of the federal awards, we did complete the single audit again in draft. We have it ready to go. We'll file it whenever we can. We did audit the special education cluster. That's about 65% of your total federal dollars. About 1.9 million out of 2.9 total federal dollars received. We do also do 2 different audits, one over your bonded funds and one over your sinking funds. That's called 1351A and section 1212. Both of those, they're just basically additional levels of testing. We'll check to make sure in terms of bonded dollars, it's in compliance with whatever the voters said that you should be spending it on, also that bid requirements were done. And then for the sinking fund, it makes sure that you're spending it on what sinking funds are at the state level legally allowed to be spent on. The next page is a bar graph showing your revenues over the last 4 years. The big takeaway here would be you'll see these lines kind of slope upwards with a slight tick down in the current year. That's completely related to federal funding. So if you look at the 2024 results versus the 2025 results, you'll see about a $4 million decrease in the way of ESSER. That dried up around 9/30 of 2024, so you only had about a quarter of it, and just basically the tail end of it that hit in fiscal 25 versus about $4 million that hit in fiscal 24. So you'll see if you look at 24, that's 7% of your dollars were from federal sources, down to 3% last year. So if you take that out, you had about a $2.5 million increase in federal revenues, again, backing out all those federal changes. And then onto the expenditures, the exact same chart, except you'll see that basically your expenditures stabilized this year. That's a testament, we'll get into it on, I think on the next slide, but that's a testament to fiscal responsibility at the administrative level. There is a lot of discipline in that number, and that's a compliment to the business office. When you know revenues are declining, you're able to stabilize your expenditures and not go into a significant deficit. We'll again talk about that. I think it's the next slide here. So budget comparison, this is Pat and Joey's report card is what I always call it. You want to have positive numbers along the right column there, so variance with the final budget, about a $600,000 positive variance in terms of revenues, a $2 million positive variance in terms of expenditures, for a total variance of about $2.8 million. So a total variance of about 2.6%, again, against about $100 million of revenues and expenditures. So you generally target somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 2% on each category, so you're well underneath kind of that 4% threshold, which is what we would be looking for. And again, you don't budget to zero, because if you go negative, you get a nice letter from the state that says you spent more than you should have, or you didn't bring enough revenue, as you said that you would. So again, that's a testament to your strong business office with very, very strong budgeting, very strong financial control. This next slide, the bulk of the information here is 23-24 information. It just gives a comparison on where you are in the current year relative to where you were last year from a fund balance perspective, and then where you are relative to your peers. So as of 2025, you're at about 29% fund balance as a percentage of expenditures in your general fund. That's up a little bit from last year, and then just slightly over the state average and the Ottawa area average. So you'll see, I think, across the board going into 2026, these are gonna start to decline. Again, that's just a lot of COVID dollars, ESSER funding, CRF funding that was kind of dumped into the education system over the last few years. That's gone now. And some of that got baked into your kind of operating costs. Some districts were better than others in terms of baking that into go forward costs. So you'll see some of this start to erode across the state, and then it's up to your district and how you actually do handle those dollars drying up. And again, your first year without all that funding was extremely strong, as you look back to the previous slide. Again, this is the only slide of the PowerPoint that is kind of draft. It's your single audit. We did test the special education cluster, which is about 65% of your total federal spending. No issues that we're aware of from what we would see as the draft compliance supplement. There could be a curveball that comes out when they do issue the final compliance supplement. We don't expect that to happen, but from what we know right now, there were no issues noted in terms of your federal dollar spending in relation to the compliance supplement. And then just kind of a wrap up here, we do have one additional letter. You'll get this letter every year. It's called a governance letter. It says cookie cutter as it gets. Basically, if there was something we wanted to disclose to the board, we would note it in here, and then you would read it today. This is, again, as cookie cutter as it gets. We would basically call this a pro forma or a template. We print it off, we put your district's name on the top, and there's really no changes relative to standard. There is one slight change this year. You do have a new GASB, which was implemented. That's what that second paragraph talks about. But beyond that, it would look exactly the same as what you got last year, which is what you want to see. The only other thing that we mentioned here is that if you had a management letter, we would talk about it now. A management letter would be operational changes, internal control improvements, anything like that we know that, again, we would bring up to the board from sort of an operational perspective. That would be discussed in a management letter. Again, we don't have that for you, so there's nothing that we feel would rise to the level of disclosed in a meeting like today. So again, that was a really high level, brief overview of the financial statements. We did spend about 90 minutes talking about it. I remember the Tigers were playing, so we were monitoring those back on October 2nd. But if there's any questions, feel free to ask right now.
When did you say that we would actually get the final supplemental single audit, and any time frame at this point?
It's a great question. I wish I could tell you for sure when. So your actual financial statements are filed with the state already. So you will get your November state aid. All of that was handled already. What we are waiting on is about a 13-page report that just shows your schedule of expenditures of federal awards. There's a couple letters that go along with it saying we audited in compliance with uniform guidance. That is sitting in draft form. The administrative team here has seen it. They've approved it already. It's ready to go. We're just waiting for the compliance supplement to be issued. And we can't issue it because basically we don't know the rules that we're playing by yet, is essentially what it boils down to. So if there's significant changes relative to 2024 or the draft that we've already seen, we would potentially have to come back out and do additional testing. No one's expecting that. We're just, everything I've heard is that we're waiting for somebody to hit approve or submit or whatever.
You can get date today.
Yeah, yep, exactly. So we really don't know. It could be, we were very optimistic it was gonna be out in October. We were very optimistic it was gonna be out in July, honestly.
Have you ever seen it this late?
No, it's never been this late. This is the first time, at least in my career, we've ever had to split reports. So we've been doing that at our firm, Inside Baseball, we've been doing that for the last 3 weeks, is manually splitting the financial statements from the single audits and reproofing all the reports and getting them already to be issued, so. No, it's, the latest I think we ever had was when GASB 68 was implemented, and that was 12 years ago, but that was issued, I think, October 1st roughly. We were around time with all of us with districts I did.
I will say to Don and to the rest of the folks on the board who weren't at the meeting, it was an excellent meeting, and it helps to have someone like Ken around, who's been around for quite a while and is able to put perspective on everything from a historical on what, and also Andrew as the treasurer. And then Jody, I don't think you were with us, were you? But your fingerprints were all over that report. And, so anyway, it was a very, very productive meeting. So, thank you very much. Andrew?
Yeah? Yes.
Nope.
If I could just, I mean, I think, Joel touched on, part of the budgetary control and the right sizing things after COVID. I think that's part of the Hudsonville story, because we really last year of taking apart COVID programs in a responsible way and redeploying things. That was, I mean, it started with the superintendent's cabinet, but it really took cooperation between the administrators, the leadership of the union. I mean, everybody works so well together here to do what's right for kids, but make great use of the funds. And I would say it's rare to have a district that in their strategic plan, there are actually financial things noted about conservative budgeting and just long-term planning. Just kudos to Hudsonville and just the good organizational structure. We think that it's a good place to work. We enjoy putting the reports together. Jody does a great job leading the audit process, and Stacy Johnson in our office as well. So, great team.
The board's been through several audits. I know several of you, many audits. Just having a consistency in the business office with Pat's team, working with the same firm, has been very helpful on the little things. I just appreciate the work, Pat. Jody, I know Stacy's not here, you flipped, because not that she has COVID now, but so just want to thank the work that you do, and just it's a lot of work day in and out with a lot of moving pieces, so nice job.
And a great presentation, considering how much, the volume of information that had to be condensed. I'm just working on something similar to that in my office today, and the amount of time it takes to get everything in the right spot, to create the formulas, to populate the next spreadsheet, to make the graph. I mean, it's, again, we went through this in 15 minutes. I know it took a lot of additional clerical time as well as the time that we had to do the audit, so thank you to the whole team.
It's a good point, and your finance team here does proof all of the stuff that we send them to, so we will send drafts of every report that you would ever see. And we've already proofed it on our end, and they spend a lot of time to go through it as well.
Excellent. Any other questions on the finance?
I just appreciate it every chance I get to tell our, I economic, faithfulness in our district and the history of it. I try to do that, and especially with maybe a bond coming up down the road, I always want people to know, hey, we're really good with our finances, we're very conservative and all that. I wish the voters would love to look at something like this, but that probably is not a good selling point for bond issues, given the audit, but, it's much appreciated, so thank you.
Okay, let's go on to, the world language activation.
You guys are welcome to stay.
Jody, where are you going?
Yeah, one of the, I'm gonna turn over to Amy to talk about, why we're here to talk about world language, and then we'll go with, questions from there. Mrs. Taylor.
So this evening, we have the opportunity to kind of give an overview of the work that Delia Bush, one of our assistant principals at the high school, has been leading with a group of administrators and a counselor and a teacher over the last year or so. One of our core goals was to evaluate our world language program, and that's exactly what Mrs. Bush has led. And so tonight will just be an overview of where we're at and kind of the process that we've been through. We thought this would be a good opportunity to give you an update on the SOAR 5 goal. Turn it over to Mrs. Bush.
All right. On the computer. Like Mrs. Taylor said, our mission for our committee was to evaluate the world language opportunities pre-K through 12. That was something that was surveyed through the SOAR survey that went out to the students and the staff and the parents. And so one of the things that came out was looking at that. Our committee members were myself, a couple of other administrators, as well as our world language department chair and our guidance counselor who oversees some of the world language. And some of the things we've done, and I'll dive deeper into more details on these. We formed our committee, reviewed some of the past committee work. This is a committee that has been around a lot longer than I have been in Hudsonville, so I needed some background on what was happening beforehand and kind of where we wanted to move forward. And this was through the survey, evaluated staff, parent, and student feedback, focusing specifically around the questions that talked about foreign and world language opportunities, analyzed current and historical trends within Hudsonville, and then also took a look at all the other OK Red schools to see what kind of world language offerings that they had, to see if we were aligned in something similar as far as that offering. So some historical information that was shared with me that was before I came here. So in 1920, the World Language Committee, which was around still then, working from the SOAR 4 goal, determined that it was not sustainable to continue offering German and Chinese at the middle school. It was offered at the middle school along with Spanish around that time. And what they discovered was in SOAR 3, backtracking several years, one of the big goals was to expand elective options at the middle school. And so when they did that, one of the unintended consequences was less people were taking world language and more people were taking the other elective options. And so the Chinese and German numbers specifically kind of took a nosedive. And so they stopped making that an option at the middle schools. The numbers just weren't sustainable to have that at that point when that decision was made. So that jumped us into our looking at the data from this most recent survey, which, and I'm not gonna read all of that to you, but it's very positive. Teachers, students, and parents are interested in expanding opportunities. And when we first got this, and I think this was my first year here, and we were looking at all of the data during like my very first welcome to Hudsonville meeting, we were digging into the data, and some of it I was like, I wonder if this is gonna revolve around sign language. I wonder if this is gonna revolve around, even before I knew I was gonna be entwined in the world language department, but is it gonna be, like, where is it gonna come from? And so we really started to dig more into that. So on the surface, it looks like everyone is in support of expanding world language. Well, then we need to look at more specifics, because really, we're not seeing that in the numbers. So I have the numbers from the past 5 years for all of the different language offerings that we have at the high school. The reason that I have German 3 and then 4 and 5 kind of outlined in black is because those are offered as one class. So they teach German 3, 4, and 5 together. That makes sense? Okay. So German 1 numbers are pretty solid. German 2 also fairly solid. Students are taking that for their 2 years of credit that they need for a language. 3 and 4, they really start to die down, which is why we combine them, otherwise we would have a class of 5 and a class of 2. So, not really sustainable. Those are our German numbers, and then Chinese, similar, although even smaller. Yes? Did you have a question, Jordan?
No, sorry, I'm just
Oh,
amazed
okay.
at how much less
Okay.
it's even.
Okay. Same setup, with Chinese, the numbers for Chinese 1 and 2 are higher than 3 and 4, but also not as high as German. So that's where we're at with that. Can I switch to the next one? I don't wanna jump ahead. Okay. Spanish is the last one. Spanish numbers continue to be, very high. Our Spanish 1 numbers look small because that only is high school Spanish 1, and many middle school students will take it in 8th grade, and those numbers are not factored in here. So that's why you see it so different between Spanish 1 and Spanish 2. Pretty significant jump.
Was that the case also back in 2021, 2022?
What's that?
Was that the case also back in
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that, I think, is the really big bubble class that graduated last year, if I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
If I've got my math right, I
Yeah.
think that's the large bubble group that went through, so it was a really big class, I think,
Right.
600. So Spanish numbers continue to be very large. Our AP numbers had a weird bubble in 24, 25, and now it's back to like it's kind of leveled off in the low 40s. So those are the numbers of all of them for the past 5 years. So to summarize that data, Spanish continues to be the most popular, German 1 and 2 warrant having 1 or 2 sections per year, which is what we've run with the last several years. Chinese 1 and 2 have 1 section each year. Those continue to decline. We always look at those numbers every year when we start looking at master scheduling and what will be offered, so those are things that we definitely keep on our radar. So students really just aren't taking many language electives that we currently offer, so to expand them, I don't know that would make a lot of sense, is what the committee determined.
The data.
That
right?
didn't make a ton of sense. So that was our summary. I do wanna highlight, like I said, what some of the other districts are offering. I tried to dig into the OK Red as well as all the different levels. There are a couple Spanish immersion programs, that are in Rockford and West Ottawa at the elementary level. Beyond that, there's no other Spanish at elementary level. Middle school is all really similar to what we have. There's a few that have like a flow of the Spanish immersion going up. German and French, I'll be honest, I don't know much about those programs, but for high school, usually it's 2, sometimes 3. East Kentwood is, I think, unusual in that they have 4. And then the Spanish one at Rockford is just the advanced track for Spanish immersion. That's where they're at. So those are the other districts, similar to where we're at. And then, as I kind of alluded to, after looking at that data, the committee determined the numbers currently don't warrant expanding the program. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I expected there to be some, like, people wanting sign language to be put in there, and there really wasn't. There were a few comments about it, and that was it. It was not mentioned at all. And we do have a few students who are taking sign language. They take it as someone else. So they're not, they take it in a class where other credit recovery students are taking courses or online classes, so it's not taught by a Hudsonville teacher, so there's a few if they ask for it, but it just didn't come up, which surprised me, honestly, but.
Delia, when we were processing, if I get this wrong, jump in and correct me, but Delia had a great point, and I think we even discussed it with Dr. Vanderjack when we think about the question that we ask, because if I'm a parent of a student here in Hudsonville and someone asks me, would you like to see more offerings in world language? I mean,
Of course.
yeah, let's go, right? But that might not be a guarantee that my student would engage in that. And so just thinking through sometimes how questions are asked, and it's our due diligence, and the committee did an excellent job of saying, let's look at this, let's evaluate it, that's what we committed to. And certainly the numbers are just not showing us something that says we need to go in this direction with any expansion. And we are, really the analysis says there's declining, participation in even German and Chinese, so.
What caused us to look at this, is this,
So yeah, so part of our strategic plan was one of the short-term goals was to evaluate the world language program. So that was the process that the committee went through to evaluate, and sometimes there's a recommendation that comes out to make changes, other times it's, let's see where we are. This might very well be one that we are where we are, and maybe we revisit it again in a few years based on numbers. And you can see some of the numbers dwindling, that could be the new wave, or it could take a full change, right? You look at Kentwood as an example, they've had a Latin program the entire time since I was in high school. Kentwood had a Latin program. Those are not very common. I think East Grand Rapids and Kentwood are the only two districts that have Latin programs in the public school system. So you never know what's gonna happen. I know Chinese was a kind of a up-and-coming language, and everybody's gonna have to, and you're talking about Chinese immersion programs that some districts have. It's all over the board, and things ebb and flow. So the task was to evaluate for the strategic plan. Go from there.
I have one more slide just to end with a celebration. I asked our world language teachers at the high school to send me some good stuff, and they did. So a lot of students earning the seal of biliteracy, which is a test that they can take in the spring that will allow them to get a seal on their diploma that says they're biliterate. You can get it from either getting a 4 or 5 on your AP test, or you can take the actual seal of biliteracy test, which is 2 half days. They have to do listening, speaking, writing, all of the parts. It's pretty difficult, so the fact that they've had that many is great. 4 of our students even earned it as juniors last year, which is an impressive feat. This is new, as of last year's AP testing, I updated this. Their scores continue to increase. AP Spanish is one of the harder AP classes, in AP tests, so for our students to be scoring above the global and Michigan scores is pretty exciting to see. And last year, 5 students received honor scores for Chinese, 4 students received them for German, and 28 received them for Spanish. And to receive those, you have to have taken, I believe, 4 years and earned above a 3.5, I think, in all of the classes that they took. And that's some positive.
And a couple of things, having just come from a trip in Europe and all these individuals who know 3 or 4 languages, this is disappointing from the perspective of there seems to be either A, not as much interest, or B, not as much of a commitment to be global speakers. And I'll just leave it at that.
Can I make a comment about
Yes.
that though? I think the one thing that is changing a little bit of that narrative is technology. Sitting in a hospital room with maybe somebody that does not speak our native tongue, and knowing that technology can translate everything on a whim does look different. So I think to your point of there may not be as much of an interest because there's this sense of I feel safe because I have technology, and if I can't read that sign, I'll hold my phone up and it translates on, you know what I mean? I'm not saying it's okay.
We use Google Translate several times.
Right, so
when we're out on our own,
It is
yes.
different, like when I
Yes.
remember going to Europe as a kid,
Yeah.
I had to understand a lot more than I had to speak.
Yes.
Now a device is different than a
Yeah.
phone. So I don't know if that's not a good answer, but
No.
it's an interesting
Right.
It's a
change.
fact of
Yeah.
Yeah.
current state.
And then secondly, I see that Jenison is not on this list,
Yes, I
but
am.
I do recall that they still have a Spanish immersion at the elementary, is that correct?
Yep.
And it would be really interesting, and I don't know if they're willing to share their data with us, but you think about someone that's gone through that program now, it's probably been what, has it been 5 years, 6 years?
Maybe
Closer to
longer.
10.
Yeah.
It's been longer than that, okay. And, you know, where those students continue to go, and I do like the fact that Spanish seems to be strong in our area, because then if there are students who are in that area, but technically in our district, they have the opportunity to go forward, even if they jump up to Spanish 3 and 4.
Sure.
But, Yeah, I appreciate your work in checking into this, cause I am somewhat surprised. And maybe, again, it comes down to, given choices, you have only so many choices. And since English seems to be the language of the world, we don't feel the pressure as other countries do to learn, to be bilingual, so.
I think we tried to grab districts that were of the larger size,
Yes.
so it wasn't just the
Yeah.
OK Red, but it was large OK
Yes.
Red schools,
Yeah.
Particularly at the high school
Yeah.
level. The immersion programs, I can speak from my experience in my former district, they are, ideas that really are meant to expand the population and, the clients we're getting kids from. It's a big school of choice, trying to get people to come in to your district because you don't have other options to bring them in. So that is part of it.
Right.
So that was kind of where we were. I think the questions about, opportunities, what does that look like? You ask somebody, should we have more language programs? The answer is yeah, but my kid's not gonna take it.
Right.
So that's another conversation. Maybe that question in the future leads more towards, if more language opportunities were available, would you be interested in your child taking them?
Right.
And that might look a little bit different. The interesting part, to be honest with you, is of all the languages that really gets the least attention is really the world language of French.
Well,
And that's the language that should be, skyrocketing, and it's just not. And that's been that case for, I'd say, at least 25 years since, the French program was in the building that I worked in for the better part of my career. And it was just interesting thinking it would take off, and it just hasn't.
I can remember when we let French go,
Yeah.
there was a big, hullabaloo, I guess you would say, because for people who are in music and the arts, that was the language of that. But obviously, at that time as well, we noted, based on data,
Yeah.
what was of interest, but.
Yeah.
And I know, Ken, you've had a lot of inter-country business dealings. I mean, what is your thoughts about these languages?
Well, a couple of questions, a couple of things. So first of all, really well done. I mean, a data-driven discussion about this is just really well done. It's not opinions and it's not, whatever. So thank you for this. Does the data, so I'm gonna go off on a couple. Does the data support sustaining what we have today? Does the data support saying we should continue with Chinese, we should continue, we sustain, and maybe that's a question for another time, but.
I think that's an annual, when students begin to register, really taking a look at numbers. Quite honestly, that happens in all of our elective areas, depending on interest, and for whatever reason, some electives have higher interest in wanting to enroll in those courses than others, and so I think that is the space that we're in. We certainly, as Mr. Bush alluded to, can't run courses, it's not fiscally responsible to run courses with 5 students in them, and so we've done some combining so that we can continue to offer those opportunities for our students, but I think that those are some of our realities as we move forward and needing to make some of those decisions.
Yeah. So Rockford's had French for a long time, and they get kids to take French.
Handful. I mean, it's very similar to our numbers as it's been diminishing. They used to have 3 teachers, and now they have 1 that's part-time.
Okay. You touched on that, but one thing you hear about Jenison is, Spanish immersion, and we explored that. We've explored that a couple of times. My time on the board and so on. So, is it a way they draw? And you said Rockford. Is it a way that they draw students in as we're competing more and more for students? There's the reality of how many students you have, and then there's build it, they will come, which is kind of the Spanish immersion thing, right? Does it become, and again, that's a future thing, but does it become a way that we attract, let me ask you, does Spanish immersion or an alternative such as French become a way that we attract students away from Jenison or away from Granville or away from Zealand? And again, maybe a conversation for a different time, but that also crosses my mind here.
I think it's a good question, and I think it's a much deeper
Yeah,
conversation
it is.
about what that
It
looks
is,
like.
yeah.
Implications for staffing, certification. evaluation become.
Yeah, there's all that stuff.
Everyone's
It
looking
is,
for all of
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I also think that that question exists, what are the 2025 offerings that our
Right.
families and students want? And I think, certainly that can be on the table for that conversation, but that's a
Right.
little bit where my brain lives.
Yeah.
Even with some of our SOAR goals around college career pathways and,
Yeah.
some of those aspects of programming, if you will. And so, I think those are always questions we wanna be asking.
Mhm. Yeah.
Not a day late, right? I mean, we wanna be ahead of that,
Right.
so.
It's a fair question. I don't know if we have enough time to get into.
No, and I didn't really expect that, and I didn't really expect an answer.
Yeah,
Those
it
are
is
just
a good
things
question.
that are kind of, as I read through it, that I think about.
And it's really hard to determine how many students, we would lose to an immersion program. Yeah, we can look at school of choice and transfers out that go into a program, but were they gonna go into, they were gonna go there anyway.
Yeah.
It's just hard to tell. I know in Rockford, it was to really to bring in a certain population from outside and bring them in. But then there was a large population of internals that wanted it, so it wasn't really a school of choice offering.
Yeah.
It just didn't warrant that, and then it became more challenging to move kids in middle school, and then in the high school, it's just a different track. It's a school within a school, which sometimes causes other challenges.
Right, right, no.
I know my fifth grade granddaughter is teaching herself French with something on her phone. I thought she was kidding when she first started talking to me, but those were real words in French that she was.
That's pretty cool.
That's kind of where it was at when I was looking at this weekend, Dawn. I was like, you was a little surprised by how low some of the numbers were, and I kind of feel like we're all kind of looking at Chinese. You don't want to say it, but even 7 probably isn't fiscally responsible. But you mentioned some of our kids are taking sign language through that other thing, and that's where I was trying to. Can we get creative? Can we still offer these maybe online so we can say we're doing it? Are there avenues to get creative there? Because you're looking at the Chinese numbers there, and you can kind of extrapolate out. We only have 10. Okay.
And some of these are, we'll take it online, just because of how it fits into their schedule.
Yeah. So maybe we can still offer them, but
Absolutely.
non-traditionally.
We don't wanna, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We just don't wanna have a kid that's really fired up about taking 4 years, and we get to year 2 and we're like, so we wanna make sure we have other options for that student coming through, that they are. And a lot of those kids at that level of the language, they are very, directed learners. They get after it.
It's probably why our AP scores have gone up, because the numbers have gone down. The kids that are sticking with it,
It's hard, it's some of the hardest AP courses there.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've got, German and Chinese are not easy languages to learn at all. So if you're taking it, yeah, you're in.
You're in it, yeah.
And then I think my mind often thinks where you were kind of going with drawing kids in, and that's what gets me excited. This has nothing to do with the language thing. It's some of the other things we've been working on with the ECC building, and yeah, we have to continually think creatively about being a world-class offering here. Yeah, maybe it's not language offerings, but there's other ways that we should be looking at this. So, but again, love the data. The data is great. It's most surprising. So thank you.
Amy, were you surprised, Adelia, at what this data showed you, where you started the?
Well, I was involved in, some of the data gathering prior to SOAR 5, and so I was a little bit surprised, but we knew that we were trending in this direction of the majority of students choosing Spanish in direct relation, as Mrs. Bush said, to the middle school elective offerings as those expanded, which again was part of strategic planning before most of us were here, actually, and so those expansions, again, that was all part of the programming of wanting more options for kids to learn about what they like and what they don't like, and so I think there were pieces of it that were surprising, but I've been a little ankle deep or knee deep in it since I've been here, so.
Do students typically take Spanish 4 and AP Spanish, or is it one or the other, or how does that look?
They'll take both. If they take Spanish 1 in 8th grade, then they'll
Oh, sure.
blow up.
They'll do AP. Right?
Mhm.
Just one quick question on the Chinese and German numbers. It looks like between like the 22, 23, and 23, 24 years, there was a pretty drastic jump off or change. Was there a change in curriculum or teachers or anything like that that could kind of explain some of these trends?
Looking at the Chinese and German numbers between 22.
Yeah, I'm just looking at like the
and-
first two columns versus the rest. I'm just curious if there's something else behind the data that maybe, same
Nothing
teachers, same everything,
significant,
same
I don't
curriculum, okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think we can all think of a handful of teachers like at the high school who they could teach how paint dries and
Yep.
kids would sign up for it because they're just
They
great
would.
educators, right? Just
Mhm.
wondering if there was, if there's, something behind, behind the numbers there, but it doesn't sound like that's the case. It's literally just students aren't interested.
Interest, right? And as they get into their high school career and discover what they are interested in, and they get, they take 2 years of German, so German 1 and 2, and then by the time they get to their junior and senior year, they have other interests in other courses, potentially AP courses that they want to access before,
Yeah.
moving on post-high school, so.
Got it, okay.
So it's that delicate balance between choices for students and a breadth of offerings so that all students can find their place and, do the learning that they want to engage in, and so it's a delicate balance.
It is hard, as a former language teacher, world language teacher, I feel that, not every child loves language and is excited about language, and they don't find it easy, right? So you have to be able to balance it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How are the teachers, have they heard the data yet, and how do they feel about it?
They're very connected to the data.
Yeah.
I think that, they're passionate about, their subject, as all of our teachers are. I think that, they know their class sizes, and they're very connected to the reality of the declining numbers.
Yeah, I just
and what
feel
that
like it
may
would
mean.
be,
Sure.
just sort of like it'd be awesome to have a class size that small, but then you're thinking, yeah.
Yeah.
Do they do any recruiting? Do they walk up and down the halls? For getting people into the,
They do go to the middle schools.
Okay.
I know Mr. Kleinserf, and I believe Frau Wedge
I
does
think
as
so,
well,
too.
goes to the middle schools in the spring before the students start choosing their courses. They also have tables, and we have our 8th grade showcase night. They have tables out there with education on them and try and hype them up, get some of the other languages out there. So they are trying, it's not the biggest.
well, as I look at the trip requests coming up next, I think we should have a couple of years of Italian, A spike there.
Even German and French would help.
Yeah.
The younger you can get them excited about, middle school is great, even, 5, 6 building would be ideal to start language learning, but in an ideal world.
I know.
And they'd be pumped, they'd be excited,
Sure.
yeah.
Well, I
Any
really
other
appreciate-
comments?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Just really appreciate your leadership with Estelia and, the entire committee's work, so.
Thank you, Julie.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mrs. Ford.
Have a good night.
Okay, Dr. Grant, Jack,
Yeah.
we'll look at the trip request.
Thanks. Along that line, we do a trip request, for next summer. We've had many of these in the past. The EF tours, very standard, touring group that takes, I've been on several EF tours myself. They'll start in Rome, and they're actually gonna head south from Rome, as opposed to heading north up into France or Switzerland. They're heading south from there, kind of doing a loop and ending up in Rome. 11-day trip. You see the cost for, both chaperones, that wanna go, as well as students. They'll do the advertisement and see who wants to go, and then optimistically make sure we're done with school by the time they wanna go to Europe. You can see the date, right after school gets out, not right today, but a couple days after, that always, but I'm sure those kids will be perfectly fine taking their exams early and then going to Europe, so that'll be.
complete control over that.
It's
all on
Mother Nature. Correct. So, we have, that is something that, unless there's questions from the board, pretty standard request, we'll bring that to the board and consent agenda at our next, board meeting in November. It's pretty cool when you read the trip where they're going, so they've got a chance to. I've I did not get a response.
I'll be right behind you.
They're a lot of fun. We left a kid in Paris once, we gotta go back and get him.
Ooh,
It's
no,
all good.
he cannot chaperone.
I was gonna say, wait.
I can chaperone.
Maybe that's why you did the call back there.
Little character. It's good for kids.
It's good for the kids. Life experience.
Yes, exactly. All right, next on the agenda, I think I have this right, is the policy revisions. This is a unique policy revision. Because I'm gonna honestly tell you, the policy committee did not get together for this policy, but we did discuss it via email. There is one change to a policy, technically two, and I'll elaborate on both. The only change to the, is to the Title IX harassment, is the definition of criminal sexual contact, which is on page 2 of the policy, which extends for many more pages, which we had to give you a copy of, but the only change is that definition of criminal sexual contact. Because of that, it addresses a form, and so the form actually has changed also, so there's an F1 and F2. The board does not approve the forms. We have the forms that come as standard forms that we use, so you'll see another 2 policies, I think there's 2, that discuss the actual form. I know it's in there. Should have tagged it. So let's see, it's at the end of, I know it's deep in here. So 51, it's the ESCA policy that addresses the forms as F1. And then it goes from there, there's another policy there. So that's the only policy additions or changes to policies. So the committee did get a chance to look at it, and I asked if we need to meet or discuss. There was a unanimous no. So to bring it to the work session tonight, and then ask the board to approve those 2 policy changes. I will say though, once those policies do go into effect, upon board approval at our next board meeting, there is a handbook change that then will come through the handbooks that you've all approved. That handbook language goes right through, so you'll see all the handbook language. I'm not gonna ask the board to approve. Technically, the board does not have to approve handbooks, but I think it's a good thing to do at the beginning of every school year. So the changes to the handbooks will come so the board can see what the changes will be that are directly impacted by this policy change. So you'll see a whole additional addendum to the policy or that will go through the handbooks. It'll go through all, and to look at it again, I think it's all the handbooks, not just the high school handbook, it's all of them.
What prompted this change again?
The definition of criminal sexual.
That's just the legal definition of it, that's what prompted the change?
Yeah, the FBI's updated definition of sexual assault. That's it. And normally we have many more, and next time I can't wait, I'm sure the committee can't wait to review them, but, and sometimes they come quickly like this. We hope that when they do them in bunches, that's what we have, but this one is one that they just needs to be addressed and updated, so we'll bring that to the next. That's okay, any questions from the board? This is fun. All right, we have the next item is the my evaluation for this year. Traditionally, I would ask tonight that the board go into closed session, but there's really nothing to discuss regarding my evaluation, just the timeline and content. So to do that, I just want to walk through this document you have in front of you, so you can understand the timeline. I know it's new for Joy, I know the rest of you have been through it. And I'll just go through the timeline. So tonight, I just want to talk about the system, the tool used, which is the MASD document. It's the same document. The only difference is instead of 4 categories, there are only 3, because there's not a highly effective category. It goes up to effective. The timeline and key dates are in front of you now. You see that? The goals, which I have gone through in the past, like mid-year goals I went through, they were discussed back in January and February. I'm going to talk a little bit how it's compiled, how the evaluation is shared with me, and then the relay, how the board approves it, and then it shares with the community later. So after tonight, well, we've already started, but getting the data together so the board has data to support each one of the elements within the domains of the framework. You don't have to go and look at everyone, but if you have a question about something you're not sure how you want to evaluate me, it's a good reference point. I do ask that you do these independent of each other. So it's not like if you're not sure, call up another board member, ask them. You are welcome to contact any one of the assistant superintendents if you have questions about content. Their information will just be sharing data that they might know about if you have questions. Some of the data that will be in the supporting documentation may not be things that I alone led. They may be things, I'll give you an example. If we look at the MTSS A and B, when we transitioned and did our whole, we changed the whole framework of how we support both behavior and academics. I was part of that, I didn't do it alone, I couldn't have done it alone. So if you look at the work that Amy did, and Mandy, and Ann, and Pat, they really did a lot of this work, but it still will be part of the supporting documentation. So you'll have that information. So I will say this, that data will be available to you, for you to review a week from, Friday. So that'll be done, so not this Friday on Halloween, but the week later, you'll be able to see that document. Along with that, you'll have my job description, you'll have my current contract, you will have any policies or procedures related to the evaluation, which most of them write in the MASD document, but the policies that we have as part of the truant policies, those policies will be available. I don't think we need them, but they're there. This is all part of the required information that the board needs to see. You'll see the current strategic plan, which you've seen many times. You'll see the student growth model that we have, my performance goals, which we reviewed back in January, then in June. There'll be a blank copy of the instrument. Then there'll be the calendar, which is actually this document that you have in front of you. By November 21, I ask that you complete an evaluation of my performance. When you do, could you please notify the board president that is complete? You don't have to tell him how you filled it out, what you did. If you gave me just that it's done so that he can rest easy, know that the task at hand. If you need more time, could you please also notify Greg, so he's aware that you might need more time. If you have any questions regarding this process, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and say you have questions.
Why do we have to have done by the 21st?
Well, because I don't wanna wait until the day before and then somebody's getting it done, so, it has, that
So
date is irrelevant.
we're not turning anything in.
I was just giving you,
Got it.
I procrastinate sometimes, so I was trying to help those that also might procrastinate, to try to get it done by a date.
And this is over, Thanksgiving breaks in between there too.
It is,
so,
it's just after that, when we come back from Thanksgiving right to that date.
Yeah.
If you get into Thanksgiving, you haven't done it, it could be a little bit family
I
friendly.
understand. No, that makes sense.
And the
You don't wanna
original-
answer questions the day before that could have answered 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I get it.
So try to get it done.
The original work session to do this was gonna be a week earlier too.
Oh, true.
Yeah, so we moved it back just to
Right.
make sure everybody could be here.
Yep, makes sense.
Quick question on the evaluation instrument.
Yeah.
Is that gonna be sent to us in Excel, PDF?
It'll be a PDF and an Excel document, so if
Okay.
you wanna type it in and fill it out and keep it yourself, you can do that.
Okay.
If you wanna print a copy, if you I don't want either one, I'm gonna stop and pick one up from Robin, you can do that
Okay.
also. Whatever you'd like. I think some people might wanna write it down and take notes, some people are better at putting it all online and having
Okay.
the notes right there. So I'll
Great.
give you both, so you have
Thank
them.
you.
Good question. Then at our December, 1st, it is a work session, but at that meeting, because of other things, we might have things that we have to bring for discussion items, so it's not the only item on our work session. That is our only work session between November and December, so we do have other items, and then we have some new course approvals that we'll bring to the board. So we'll start with all those discussion items, and then we'll go into my evaluation, which will be a closed session. So we'll, either stay in here, depending on, kick everybody out, or move, and then go through. Greg will lead the conversation regarding my evaluation and go through element by element, having discussion, trying to build consensus on each element. If you recall, it's not about an average, it's about building consensus. So we do that based on each element and go through.
Yeah, one of the things that, Dr. Van Jack and I talked about was last time we had a facilitator from the MASD, but I didn't think that was necessary, either to Dr. Van Jack, and, I think that, we can pretty much do it ourselves and come to a good consensus.
And if at any point it does not feel like we can get down that road, I can always ask for the board to, exit the closed session, and we can bring a facilitator if we have to. I don't see that happening. I think we're in a good spot as a district, in my opinion, but, we can have that conversation and go from there.
Yeah, and the advice I provide is that I don't anticipate this, but if there is a spread such that consensus is unlikely to be, gained upon on a particular item, again, don't anticipate that, but if that's the case, then it becomes not about building consensus anymore, it becomes, does everybody feel informed? And then you take, okay, just making this up, like Nick's a 2 and Ken's a 1 and Dawn's a 5 or whatever, and you you state what those are, and then you come out and say, okay, what one, the vote is at 4, or something like that, so.
Yep.
Again, we ran into that, I mean, we've applied that in the past, I think, that way.
I just saw a typo in here, sorry about that. The next is that we'll review, each item as it's based on, make sure you review documents that you may have questions on, go from there prior to the 12/1, meeting. I went through who facilitates the formal evaluations presented to the board, then after the closed session, we come here. We go through and we'll take action on, the evaluation that's done. Go through, if we agree, disagree, not we, if you agree or disagree, go from there, I don't get to vote. And go into open session, and then following that open session and my evaluation, has been approved, then there'll be a statement that, Greg and I will work on, that will be relayed at the December work session going from there, so at the board meeting, regular board, so that by December 1, after that, work session, it's really done from the board standpoint. And then Greg and I work on a comment to come out at the regular meeting, December 10, 11, that's close, going from there. It's right on it, December 11. So that's the timeline. I don't know if there are any questions. I know in the past, if you recall, for those that were here, there was, close to 800 pages of documentation that was supporting, some of the work the district has done. They'll be somewhat similar, something will look different. It was 2 years ago, some things that have happened, not just this past year. They may have happened before that might lead up to things this year, but, 2 years ago, we were doing strategic planning and surveys. We didn't do surveys this year, but we've done a lot of restructuring this year, getting ready for some pre-bond work, things like that we've had discussions on. Those are items that are out there, but there's a lot of different components of an evaluation.
I know Robin's not here tonight, but I think, last time what she did that was very helpful, and I'm assuming you're gonna do this time is, for governance, and then there's a folder for everything relating to that.
Yeah, so I have a document here that I work off of that has every one of the elements, and then there are things in green that we've added, things in red that we're deleting, and we're moving things into the folder, so you'll have all of that. And you'll also have this supporting document that shows you, so you might look at A1 and think, I don't need to look that up. I'm well aware of what I feel. If you talk about policies, you might answer policies different than, maybe Ken does based on being on the policy committee. But if Ken's not sure, he can look at what's under policy and go from there. So each one of them some have many items, some have, others, you look at maybe community engagement. There'll be a copy of my calendar, which has a lot of information. You can always look to say, yep, he doesn't go to enough, or he goes to more. Those are just examples.
Yeah, when I did the training, I was like, there was one, most of it, I'm like, I know, you're always telling us, or in the weekly, information you get, which is amazing. Yeah, the briefs, but.
There will be categories you might not know.
Yeah, there was a category that I was like, oh, I have no idea what goes on, and that's
Yep.
where I'm.
That's where you look for the
grateful
supporting
documents.
evidence. And if you get to it, you might get to a point and look at supporting evidence, say, I don't know what I'm looking at. You can easily call me and ask me
Okay,
what
perfect.
I'm looking at. I'm not gonna give you an idea of how to answer the category.
Yes.
But I can, if you're like, I thought it was meant more like this, don't
Right.
hesitate to
Okay.
ask.
Yeah.
I can't just throw my calendar out there and say, look, what I do all year, figure it out. I
Yeah.
can be more than happy, if you're looking for something specific, that
Yeah.
supports what you're looking for in the evaluation, I'll be more than happy to share that information, or tell you it doesn't exist because I don't do it. I mean, those are things that could be out there.
Something that we have this year that we didn't have 2 years ago when we last did this, we've gone back to subcommittees, we didn't have that before. So when we're at the, session on December 1st, it would probably be appropriate and necessary even for people from subcommittees to fill in the rest of if there's any concerns, to fill in the rest of no, we did do this, and this is what we met, as a committee and talked about. So I think those will be helpful also.
And I'll just give feedback for Joy, I know this is fairly new, but some of the conversation might take place that I do a fine job in certain areas, but that doesn't mean there isn't areas for growth. So some of the conversations that come out of that are also, here are the things that I hear the board talking about. I think that's what drove some of the conversation 2 years ago. Was some things that I can work on, and that helps define goals, because we go right back to goals in January.
Two quick questions. When are we getting your self-evaluation?
You don't.
We're not getting it.
You don't. No, I bring mine with me.
At the work session.
Oh, we didn't, we didn't in the past?
No, you weren't supposed to.
Got it.
Yeah, I bring it with me.
And
I
then
want
when
to
we
give
come,
you an idea.
No.
Yes.
yeah, when we come back into open session, what is presented in open session? Are we going through we're not going line by line, are we just
do.
covering each category?
We traditionally will cover, we might cover each category if the board agrees, like, hey, we agree, this is the score for domain one, for governance, this is the score, and basically it's not, when you go into open session,
Right.
it's the board basically saying, yep, that's what we hear, so
Okay.
it'll be a summary that we put together,
Yeah.
but it has to be in open session when we do it.
And all, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Any questions? All right.
Seems to be all set.
All right, I do have one other thing I'd like to review with the board, if that's okay. We were talking about this before, and I said, read this, but I need it for the, so one thing that you might hear, that is coming out through, is about the budget that was released, and the impact of the budget, and I know Pat's talked about it, I know you've heard from other members what the budget looks like. One of the contingent, components of the budget is what's called 31AA funding. So there's 31A funding, there's 35A, there's 35N, there's 11T.
LMNOP.
Yeah, all sorts, yeah. There are a lot of them. One of them that has been, quite the impact on the district is 31AA funding. And the 31AA funding covers, improved mental health, enhanced school safety, hiring mental health professionals, security cameras, door locks, those kind of things. One of the components of receiving this money, now if you recall, this is the money that through the federal government was a large amount of money. Then they drastically dropped it to like 10% of what we got the year before, and then they came back and said, we'll do a supplemental, we'll give you a whole bunch back. So it's varied, and Pat just gave you the numbers before we sat down here. So to give you a general idea, in 2022-23, so 3 years ago, it was about 800,000. And then in 23-24, it was about 1.6 million. And then it dropped down to about 100,000. So from 1.6 million to 100,000, 1.6 to 100, but it went back up to about 775. So it's been a roller coaster. There's part of that we can carry over, that we can use to spend on the next fiscal year. We've spent that, a lot of the money, we've changed around, we still have carryover from last year. We've done a lot of work trying to support our students, mental health, safety, security, and going from there. There's a stipulation in the money this year that we're still waiting to get. In fact, I just got another memo right before this meeting that I printed off, and there was nothing to highlight on it, but I want to share this, that if we decide to take the 31AA money, and I will tell you, it's about $321 million that'll be allocated for 31AA. It's roughly about $140 a student if every district takes it. If you don't take it, the number goes up because the pot is still 321 million. If everybody takes it, it's about 140,000. So right around $1 million. Is that right, Mr. Riggs? Correct. So, however, if you decide to take this money, there are 3 stipulations. Number 1, you will be subject to a comprehensive investigation following a mass casualty event, which I would expect anyway. So I don't want to get into that. I'll tell you about some of the good things. And I'm really asking you to process this. The board might have to take action, but the memo I just received says it doesn't let the board has to take action, but it might be in the board's best interest too. But it has to be done by November 16, which we have a board meeting on the 14th, I think, 13th.
14th is a Friday.
So the 13th we have a board meeting, so the timing works out great. Number 2, we waive, you're gonna wanna hang on to this word, Dawn. We waive any privilege that would be otherwise protected relating to information from disclosure. So that's attorney-client privilege. that you're waiving all rights to attorney-client privilege. And then number 3, you fully comply with the investigation process.
And the waiver of privileges for board members, administrators?
Yes, all of the above. So it waives all rights of privilege.
Cell phone policy,
I'm sorry?
cell phone policy.
Cell phone policy, all of those things. So it's subject to that. Now, initially, when we were notified, the question was, would our insurance carrier even carry us if we accepted these funds? We have since learned that our insurance carrier would still carry, because there's still speculation on how much they can really enforce this from a constitution standpoint. Some of the challenges are, this is one-time money, and you waive all rights once you take it for eternity, right? Or for as long as they deem it's the event that takes place, if it takes place. The other challenge is a mass casualty event is described as 3 or more injuries in an event.
Injuries or death?
Significant injuries.
Significant injuries, right? So you have a car accident with 3 kids after a prom. You have a fight in a school that 3 kids get significant injuries. It's not defined as what I would probably define a mass casualty event, where I think we can all list a lot of them that have taken place in our country. So I say this because if I share documentation or anything that's shared with us that I can share with you over the next 2 weeks up until this date, I just want to give it context to understand the discussions. We talked a lot about it at our cabinet today. I've been in conversations with superintendents, not only in Region 3 on the other side of the state, as well as in our local area between the core that I think I share with you, who I meet with on a regular basis. We've had conversations. People are all over the board on this right now. They're just trying to find out what's the best course of action. Our latest was, you've got one law firm saying, be very cautious. Here's all the things it could do. Another law firm like, you'll be okay, take the money. At the end of the day, my gut feeling is that if it's best for kids, we're gonna do what's best for kids. So let's process all of that. I just wanted to tee it up tonight because we had a few minutes, because this is a conversation that I think the board's gonna wanna weigh in on. And I think we should probably do it at our next meeting, and I'll know a lot more. Like I said, I got another update today. We had one earlier today from one firm, another one right before a board meeting from another firm. So.
Yeah, I think definitely we want to stay in touch with the law firms about whether or not that waiving of privilege, A, is constitutional, and B, can be a one-time waiver. I've never seen such a thing.
I haven't either.
But again, there's a lot of things we
Yeah.
haven't seen in our
Yeah.
lifetime before at the federal level. But I'm not as concerned about that maybe, just because I can't see that
Yeah.
being enforceable, but.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. The only snag that I did see was a note that said, all of this money that you received can only be spent on new things, not existing, or what we call supplanting positions. So if we funded, for example, our mental health support personnel this year, under this money, can we fund them also next year if we take the money? If the answer is no, that's operational, we have to go a different direction with that money. That changes things, because now it's one-time money, and as you know, when you put systems in place, and then the funding's not there, it's not easy to put the toothpaste back in the tube, which we've had those conversations before. So we'll get more information.
You call this federal knowledge or state?
State.
This is all state.
This is state?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's state.
Sorry, did I say federal?
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, yeah, it's all
So-
state.
This is all through the state budget.
So the more people you can talk out of this.
The
That was
board-
the one I did.
You know you wanted to stay.
We did mention that, yeah, we got $321 million.
Oh, that's right. But Doug, you told me.
You can only carry over so much, but possibly, so we did talk about that today, so I tell all our friends in the region, we would never take these.
It's a real bad idea.
Is this, did I read that this is, part of this is tied back to the whole Oxford
Yeah.
situation?
Yeah, it's in the lawsuits that are still,
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah,
still,
and this will
still,
get
Yeah.
still a heavy lift for
Yeah.
a wounded community.
NESB has not taken a formal position on this yet.
Oh,
It's the
really?
last meeting, because they're still in, let's investigate this, let's see what lawyers.
I would be very interested.
Very much dependent upon,
Yeah.
we don't know.
They're still very much,
Ken, I'd be very interested, I don't know if you can poke that a little bit more with your
I will.
connections there to see what that looks like in the next
yeah. I
two
will
and a half
check with,
weeks. It's gonna be,
We'll check with Jen and see.
yeah, it'll keep moving.
Yeah.
So that's it, and I know it wasn't on the agenda, but a lot of it just came down today and I thought we were here.
Thank
So
you,
that's
yeah.
okay.
Okay, well, it looks like we're to the, word adjournment. So, but before we do that, I wanna go around and ask if anyone has any input. Pat?
Thank you. Just like to say thanks for the board's support of strong financial systems you brought to work for, good leader and Dr. Vanderjack and good board. I've worked for a lot of boards, good board. And if you do not need paper, we can use these. But if you are gonna use the paper version, please keep it. We've got plenty of them, just that a lot of people stop by and want them. So if you don't need the paper version, there's an electronic version. I don't wanna shame anybody into giving it up if they really like it, because I love it. But if you wanna keep it, if you don't, we'll use it. Thanks for your support.
Amy?
Professional development, full day for teachers on Friday, Halloween. So looking for a great day of learning. We'll give an overview in the morning of some dyslexia legislation updates, as well as responding to incidents of bias, which we'll begin doing some more work on that. And then we'll move right into, professional learning communities work for our secondary folks, as well as continuing some specific assessment and differentiation skills at the elementary level with Bridges. And then at the secondary level in the afternoon, we'll have what we affectionately call Eagle U, and on Friday will be called Eagle Boo, where teachers get to choose different sessions, everything from restorative practices to instructional engagement strategies, and really kind of like a conference offering. We get a lot of feedback from our teachers that they really like that choice. So it's a full day, it's packed. It's been a few months of programming from an entire team across instructional services led by Mandy and my office as well. So it's really good stuff. Hoping our teachers are ready for a good day together.
Thank you. Dr. Vanderjay?
Most definitely.
Okay, Nick?
I heard there's like a big costume contest for the staff on Friday.
No.
Big prize.
No.
You're misinformed.
I think
We
you
are
should
having candy and
circulate
cookies,
that out there,
so-
see who dresses up and take permitting photos of them.
Candy and cookies, so, which is always a big hit, so.
Yeah. No, again, thanks for the reports tonight. One of the things, this is probably not, the discussion we want to have right now, but just, again, thinking about government things right now, and the fact that we got SNAP benefits coming to a close here this week. I was just thinking about that on the drive over, how many of our family, I don't know what the number is off the top of my head, but, have we had internal discussions about being able to support some of our families that are in need?
We have, but we've also had conversations, I've been in close conversation with Hand in Hand regarding the support for those families. Traditionally, those families are the ones that are similarly tied.
Yep.
So we've had a lot of conversations. The impact it has here is one thing. The number, even though our percentage might be smaller than some, the number still can be larger based on the volume of students that we have. And families that we have that are
All right,
inside.
thanks for being proactive on those discussions, so I'm good.
Thanks for the work, Amy, on the PD work. We take that for granted, but many districts don't do PD, and certainly don't do the level of PD that we do. So thank you for that. That's it.
Yeah, I was gonna have the same basic question you had, Nick, knowing that that's coming up. And I know Melissa does everything she can to connect people to social services, in addition to hand, if it's possible in the board brief, to recommend other places that Melissa would suggest that would use money wisely for families that will be affected, for sure. That would be helpful.
She's got that collaborative thing. What's the network?
That's for more for like beds and.
Yeah.
Building services or something.
Yeah. But it's a good, there are networks out there, obviously our church
Yeah,
partners are
sure.
very, very supportive,
Yeah.
and very helpful too. There is more discussion that that funding may not expire the date that it's happening. So I think there's gonna be some, it's obviously a national issue.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think there's gonna be hopefully
Yeah.
some brighter heads will prevail.
Yes.
By that.
Andrew?
Thanks, Doug, for everything you do, and Amy, you as well, appreciate you. Thanks, Pat, for the great audit and all the good work you and your team do. And Stephanie, thanks for all you done. You are a machine at promoting our district in a really positive way, especially recently, so thank you for that, appreciate it.
Yes, I agree. Thanks, Stephanie. And also thank you so much for that, bringing us the data, based on the SOAR survey, for the world language. That was very informative and helpful. Yeah, appreciate it. And
Just for clarity, there's a couple people that aren't here because they weren't heavy on the agenda, and we gave them the gift of time with their families. So
that is
that's okay.
good.
They don't always get that. There are times there are long days and
Yeah.
weekends and so forth, so I hope that's okay.
Well, the only thing I wanted to say is that if you haven't signed up for the foundation dinner next Monday, I would encourage you to probably have to make a call after the fact, because I think they closed the, yes.
Certainly let me know if you do
Yeah.
change your mind, if things
Right.
open up, you wanna come even by yourself, we'll find a spot for you.
Yeah.
We won't make you speak, but you can certainly enjoy dinner and see some kids get recognized.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for attending tonight, and thank you for the good conversations that we had. And so we'll end it with that. I'm gonna ask for an adjournment, if anyone wants to. Dawn?
Support.
Andrew? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're done. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
You giving up your paper copies?
You know what?